What's going on, mi gente? What's going on? This is Profe Gayu, back with another pop-up live. So in this live, I am going to talk about, as the title says, going broke in Mexico and abroad, as well as escaping U.S. politics. And I will talk a little bit about health insurance here in Mexico and in the Dominican Republic. So I will wait a little bit for a few folks to come online. Just wait just a little bit for a few folks to come online before I get started. Just a few folks to come online before I get started. So this live should not be that long. Yeah, I'm enjoying my mate. This live shouldn't be that long, but there is some things I want to discuss that I think is worthwhile for you all to hear. You all who are either living in Mexico or abroad, or looking to move to Mexico or some other country abroad. So real quick, just to give the backstory about me, Profe Gayu, I was born and raised in the United States, and I left the United States about four years, some change ago. I left, and then I moved to the Dominican Republic. Then eventually I moved to Mexico. Now I've been living in Mexico for about a year and a half. And what I do on the channel is I provide content, giving information on the things we deal with living abroad, as far as dealing with finances, immigration, bank accounts, current issues, all those things. So in this video, like I said, I want to focus on going broke in Mexico or abroad someplace else, escaping U.S. politics, and talking a little bit about health insurance. All right. So let's see how many folks I have on. Not a whole lot. All right. Well, I'll go ahead and get started. So when you are looking to move abroad, it does take some planning. Now, it could be as simple as you having a few dollars in your bank account, and you say, you know what, hell with this stuff going on in the U.S. or in Canada, wherever you are, and you just bounce, right? Buy a one-way ticket and bounce. You can't do that. And a lot of folks do that. MD Mustafa, saludos, what's going on? Can I ask you a philosophical question? Yes, please do. Please do. What's up, Unc? Hey, what's going on? What's going on? But go ahead and ask your question. But like I said, it could be as easy as just buying a one-way ticket and leaving, right? You can do that. However, it does take some planning. If you want to actually move abroad, you should do some planning. And the planning comes from, first, the financial aspect, right? And second, the immigration aspect. Those are the two aspects you really got to look at. All right. All right. Because these guys are trolling. But yeah, those are the things you really got to look at, right? And the reason why I really want to focus on going broke abroad is because there's a lot of folks that move abroad, and there's a lot of folks that move abroad and still don't really have their financial situation figured out, right? They'll move abroad and they sort of, well, I got some money in the bank, or I'm good for now. I got this remote job, and they'll go ahead and move abroad and not really doing the immigration planning and the financial planning. Because here's the issue. When you move abroad, you can't just live in a country for however long you want to live, right? You got to actually be there for a certain period of time. For example, in Mexico, Mexico on a tourist visa, they give you 6 months, right? 6 months. But after those 6 months, your visa's up. You either got to hit the border again, and then you're not promised to get renewed for another 6 months, or you got to go back to your home country. And that's the reason why you really got to do some planning, right? As far as the immigration portion for Mexico, it's pretty straightforward. You got to show that you earn quite a bit of money or have some money in your bank account, and then you can make the move. But here's the issue. For those folks that don't really give much attention to that planning, and they just move abroad and book that one-way ticket, get to Mexico, get to the Dominican Republic, and then if that remote job goes away, or they run out of money that they had in their savings, or they find out that, wow, living in Mexico is not so cheap. Wow, living in the Dominican Republic is not so cheap. Then you really got to make some adjustments. And I'm telling you, the last thing you want to do is move to Mexico, move to the Dominican Republic, really get accustomed to that laid-back lifestyle, the people, the food, the weather, and all the things that come with living in those countries, and then have to pack up and go back home because you didn't do that financial planning that you were supposed to do beforehand, or you did not plan around immigration that you should have done beforehand, right? Because I'm telling you, if you've been abroad for a year, 2 years, 3 years, even 6 months, and you go back to the States, and you got to go back to going into the office, doing a 9 to 5, I'm telling you, it's going to be one of the most miserable feelings ever, because you had it right in front of you, that opportunity to live abroad. You had it, but because you didn't properly plan, now it's all gone, or now you got to start over, right? And maybe you starting over is not so bad because you already have that motivation to go ahead and do the whole process again, but do it better and more efficiently. But people do go broke. I haven't met so many folks here in Mexico, but I do know in Dominican Republic, it happens very often. Well, folks would move, they would take that one-way trip to DR, get an Airbnb, start living their life, but then they find out, hey, it is much more expensive to live out here than I initially thought. Maybe in 1995 or in 2000, maybe in 2005, you can get away with living in Mexico or Dominican Republic for a couple of $1,000s a month, $1,500 a month. You probably could. Today, 2024, in Mexico, in Dominican Republic, $1,500 a month, it's not going to cut it. $2,000 a month, it's going to be tight, because I'm telling you, the cost of living is a lot more expensive now. Groceries, gone up. Rent has gone up. And normal services such as health insurance and all that stuff that used to be very cheap before, all that's gone up. And you really have to do some financial planning. And if you're going to live abroad in another country, I do not recommend you going to that country to find a job, right? Don't move to DR thinking that you can get a job teaching English. You probably could, but there's not going to be a lot of money in that. I'm telling you, it's not. And I don't care if you got a master's degree or a doctorate. There's not a whole lot of money in teaching English in Mexico and as well as the Dominican Republic. The money's not there. So you really got to look at how you're going to earn money, either from resources abroad or having some sort of business in Mexico or in DR to actually maintain your lifestyle. Now, there's plenty of remote jobs, plenty of jobs you can do remotely, businesses you can do remotely, services, all that stuff you can do remotely. It's out there. Just do your research, you'll find it. It's out there. But definitely plan wisely, because you can really set yourself up for failure if you fail to plan. And the reason why I'm talking about this is because I hear a lot of folks online complaining about specifically Mexico, about the requirements to get a visa, temporary visa, permanent residency visa here in Mexico. It's gotten a lot more expensive. You go to some of these consulates. McAllen used to be the cheap one. Now McAllen is a lot more expensive. Some of the others are really expensive. It's not just expensive on that end. Also, living in Mexico has also become more expensive. I can tell you, if we look at 1 year ago, for the prices we see in the supermarket, it really has gone up. If you go to some of these electronic stores here, the prices of everything has gone up. And Uber, I use Uber pretty often. That's the way I get around because I don't drive in Mexico. That has really gone up. So the cost of living has gone up, and you really need to do your part and plan efficiently plan to make that move here to Mexico, and that goes for DR or anywhere else you plan on moving to, or you are currently living in abroad. Now, I always recommend for folks too is, even though you move abroad and you have all your remote job or your pension, retirement, whatever the case you got going on in the US or Canada, wherever you're from, I always highly recommend that you open up a bank account in the country you're living in. Here's why. Because when you're dealing with cash, and say you lose your ATM card or you lose your wallet, what are you going to do? Tell me, what are you going to do if you lose your wallet here in Mexico? You're going to fly back to the US to get all that sorted out? Or you're going to call your bank in the US to close all your accounts, to have them mail you a card? What are you going to do? That is complicated. I'm telling you, it's complicated. And when you are in need for cash or funds immediately, that presents a whole lot of complications. That's why it's always good to have a local bank. If you lose your local Scotia bank debit card here, if you lose it, just go to Scotia Bank the next day and get a new one. It's too easy. Or whatever bank you use, Santander or City Banamex, whatever. You can get that fixed quickly. That's why it's always good to deal with the local bank and deal with the local currency. It's always good to do that. So, yeah, like definitely, I just highly encourage you all to plan. You know, piss poor planning gets piss poor results. Definitely plan and plan efficiently so you can definitely have success living abroad. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is escaping U.S. politics. And look, let me be honest. If you are not living in the U.S., U.S. politics do not affect you that much. I'm sorry, it really doesn't. Now, I understand that people will say, well, the U.S. is a big country, it's a superpower, and they affect everything that goes on in the world. Yeah, that's true, but that's like soft influence, right? It's not direct influence. Now, you may have some folks, well, I'll tell you this. I met quite a few folks, that when, I'll just specifically talk about this. Quite a few folks have left the country when Donald Trump got elected in 2016. Now, I'm not for or against Donald Trump specifically, so just putting that out there. But I will say that a lot of folks made that move because they wanted to escape the U.S. crazy U.S. politics and to move to another country to get rid of all that. And you hear folks joke all the time, talking about, yeah, if such and such get elected, I'm moving to Canada, or such and such get elected, I'm moving to Mexico. You hear that all the time. But the reality is that when you do leave the country, you don't see the craziness of U.S. politics in every facet of society when you live abroad. Because I'm telling you, in the U.S., man, it's whether you're looking at a movie or a TV show, Netflix or YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, Twitch, this, that, TV, whatever the case is, you go to work everyone is radio. Everyone's talking about U.S. politics in one face or another. Like everything is about politics, right? And sometimes that can divide relationships and families, and it just a bunch of nonsense. But I'm telling you, when you live abroad, when you move to Mexico, when you move to DR, people don't really care about that. And then really the only folks who care about that are the folks who still have both feet, even though they're in DR, even though they're in Mexico, they still have both feet in the US. What do I mean by that? Well, they're not permanently living abroad. They have all their investments, resources, job, family, everything, all that is still in the US. So even though they are in DR, or even though they're in Mexico, they're still focused on what's going on there and not focus on, what's going on locally, right? So that's what I mean when I say 2 feet still in the US. And honestly, it's just like, look, why are you here? Why are you bringing all that craziness from the US here to Mexico, right? It has no place here. Same thing in DR. It has no place there. Like, leave all that craziness there. That's why people leave the United States, so they can leave all that craziness and actually move to a country where people actually focus on other things outside of politics. Now, I'm not saying that you should ignore local politics, right? If you're living in Mexico, you should know what's going on locally as far as the president, the mayor, the governor, etc. You should have an idea of what it is, even though you're not participating. But I mean, leave that stuff in the US, man. Like, no one cares. No one cares. So if you are really into politics and that always comes up in your conversations, when you go to Mexico and when you go to DR or some of these other countries, leave it there. No one wants to hear it, right? We escaped the US for a reason, and that's to escape all that craziness that goes on there, especially the politics, right? People don't want to hear it, period. Don't. And if you are in the US and you feel like it's unbearable, I'm telling you, once you leave the country, I promise you, once you leave the country, you will find a huge difference. You will have a huge weight lift off your shoulders in terms of U.S. politics and all the other craziness that comes with it, right? Period. Who I got in the chat? Anyone in the chat? Anyone? All right, no one yet. So the other thing I really wanted to talk about, unless any of you have any questions, if you have any questions, any comments, feel free to leave them down there. Let me know. But the other thing I want to talk about is health insurance, because I think some of us, when we move abroad, some of us who are maybe a little on the younger side or whatsoever may not be so concerned with health insurance, but health insurance is definitely really important wherever you are. And if you do plan on moving to DR or plan on moving to Mexico, that should be one of your top priorities. I don't care if you're 25 years old or 60 years old. That should be one of your top priorities of getting that squared away. Here's why. If you move to DR, I look at Dominican Republic, for example, then I go to Mexico. In DR, a lot of the health insurance companies require you to be on the insurance for at least 6 months, or maybe even sometimes a year, depending on the services, to actually be able to benefit from the insurance, right? So I recommend that if you have a date set, for example, I plan on moving to the Dominican Republic in June 2025. Well, 6 months before, which is, I would say December, I will go ahead and get your insurance. Go ahead and buy the insurance so that when you get there, in June 2025, you've already paid 6 months into that insurance, right? It's already there. I got a question. Also, how hard is it to learn Spanish? It is not that hard to learn Spanish. It just takes patience and time. The way that I learned Spanish was a combination of watching TV shows like telenovelas, TV shows, movies in Spanish and putting them in English subtitles or vice versa. And I started listening to music in Spanish, and I started doing a lot of reading articles and lyrics, the music, whatever I get my hands on to really start building my vocabulary and really understanding the language. And my phone, I'll put all my settings in Spanish. Like literally, like changed my whole lifestyle where everything is Spanish driven to really learn the language, and that's how you learn. The other way is to move to a country that speaks Spanish, and you will be forced to speak and learn Spanish, right? Because here in Mexico, I can try speaking English, but folks don't speak English over here, so I have to force myself to speak Spanish, right? That's how it works. So that's how I did that, and I did that when I was young, still in high school, and over time I improved, and boom, there you go. But go back to the health insurance. So I recommend in DR 6 months out to buy your health insurance. That way, when you get there in June 2025, and that's your moving date, 6 months before you bought it, you get there June 2025, and you're already in the game. You can use your insurance, pay a small copay, when you go to see your doctor or whatever the case may be, and that's it. And insurance in DR is cheap. When I first got my insurance, I was paying about a little less than about 70. No, I was paying about $60 a month, right? And that was like the general health insurance that I have with Humano. And then over time, it gone up. Now I pay about the same amount. I pay about the same amount, a little more. But yeah, so I pay that a month, and I still have it, even though I live in Mexico. I still have my Dominican health insurance. I maintain that because even though I spend more time in Mexico, I still spend a lot of time in DR. So therefore, it's necessary that I still have that insurance. Also, when I was here in DR, when I was here in Mexico, when I first got my insurance, I didn't have full access to my insurance for a whole year, right? So if I had a serious issue and I had to get an operation, then my insurance would not have covered it completely here in Mexico if I was within that first year. But after that first year, things are different. So that's the difference that I found in my insurance that I have in Mexico and in DR. But definitely plan on that, because you never know when something happens. You never know. So don't depend on your insurance in your home country, because you're moving to another country. You cannot expect that country to have a hospital or a clinic that takes that insurance that you have from back home. It is possible, but don't rely on that, because when it comes to emergencies, you don't want any bureaucratic nonsense. You want to be able to get treated immediately. So definitely prioritize health insurance when you are moving abroad. Most definitely. And I would even recommend that if you do have health insurance in your home country, it may not be a bad idea to keep that insurance in addition to buying new insurance in your new country, right? Definitely. I have any other questions? Any questions whatsoever? Hey, so we got 6 people in the chat. Be sure to go ahead and give me a like, please. Subscribe if you like the content. If you have any questions, please let me know. Let me know if you have any questions. Anything whatsoever. Me and another sip of my mate. Any questions about anything I just talked about? Health insurance, planning, financial planning for moving abroad, or immigration planning for moving abroad, going broke. Any questions, comments, anything whatsoever? All right, well, that's all I really want to touch on today. If any of you have any questions, feel free to write it in a comment and I'll get back to you shortly. I'm going to make a habit of doing this every Saturday morning or Saturday afternoon, jumping on just to talk about different topics with you guys about living abroad. So again, this channel here, I only focus on living abroad and dealing with issues as a person living in another country. You know, again, for those who don't know about me, I'm Profe Gayu. I born and raised in the United States. I was in the military, and when I left the military, when I got out, I moved abroad to the Dominican Republic, and then about a year and a half ago, I moved abroad here from the Dominican Republic to Mexico. So that's my story. I'm living in Mexico, specifically in Puebla. I am enjoying it. It's a really, really relaxed lifestyle that I have right now. I'm grateful, thankful, and I am enjoying my blessings. And yeah, this is I will probably be here for another 6 months in Puebla. Then I go to Mexico City. We'll be there for about maybe a year and a half, maximum 2 years, and that's it. Then I'm moving someplace else. But yep, that's me, and I appreciate you all coming through. I see we got 5 in the chat. Again, any questions, any comments? Atomic Star Lord. Any questions, any comments? Anyone else got any questions, comments? All right, well, if that's all, I'm signing off. Be sure to like and subscribe. Peace.